Hello, everyone. Welcome to a new episode of Immigration Fridays. I'm your host, Prashanti Reddy, and we're here again to navigate the ever evolving maze of US immigration. What are we discussing this week? This week, we will be discussing how to get from a H1 to an employment based green card, and what are the advantages and disadvantages, if any. What is the process involved? So, let's start with the first topic. Is there an advantage of filing a green card? For an employee, obviously there is. Because if you're on a H1, you can only be on a H1 for a period of 6 years. So unless you file your labor cert and I-140 pronto, you will soon run out of H1B status and you'll have to leave the country. So for an employee, the other advantage is that once you have a green card, you obviously have much more flexibility with who you can work with. You can work with two employers at the same time if you want to. You get a better salary, you can take up a full-time job. So there are numerous advantages of being on a green card as opposed to being on a H1. In addition to that, while being on a H1, you are subject to many stringent H1B regulations, which most of the times employees find it difficult to follow all those regulations, and they sometimes fall out of status because of that. So what if you're an employer though? Is there an advantage of filing a green card for your employee? While there are some employers that are consulting companies, so the way they do their business is they use H1B candidates to place them at client sites. And this is because the clients themselves don't want to file a H1 for them. And those employees don't have a green card. So the only way they can work is on H1B. So it works well for both the employer and the employee. But finally, even for an employer, they have to file a green card for their employee at some point, because otherwise their H1B will get over in 6 years and then they will have to leave the country. So for both employers and employees, there is an advantage of filing a green card. So what's the right time to start the process? If you're an employee, you have to start immediately, straight away. From an employer perspective, I think you should start once you know that the employee is going to stick with you, right? Because the entire process takes a few years. It is, it costs quite a lot of money to pay the attorney, to place ads, and to go through the entire process. Also, when you're filing the I-140, it's better if the employee is actually on the payroll. So you have to start the green card not before they join you, but once they start on the payroll. That way you're able to show ability to pay. Because that's one of the requirements for an I-140, that you have the ability to pay the prevailing wage. So now let's talk about the process. What's the first step? The first step, obviously, if you're an individual, is to find a qualified US employer. Someone who's willing to sponsor you for a green card. That could be your present employer, your H1 employer, or it could be another employer, and you could be filing the green card as a future job offer. I suggest, of course, that you go with your present H1B employer, because it's easy, as I said, to show ability to pay when you're filing the I-140. But you can go with any employer. The next step, once you find your employer, is to file the labor certification. In order to file the labor certification with the Department of Labor, it's also called PERM, you have to first file a prevailing wage. Get a prevailing wage approval. And that wage has to be offered then in the form to the employer. So before you file, after the prevailing wage gets approved and before you file your PERM, you have to go through an advertisement process. In this advertisement process, you have to place an advertisement, the employer that is, has to place an advertisement in various media, including newspaper, internet, etc. And once the advertisement is placed, and if they don't get any qualified resumes, then they can go ahead and file their ETA 9089. This can be done. This form can be filed online. Once the form is filed, it takes about 6 to 8 months to get approved. And once it's approved, the next step, the third step, would be to file an I-140 petition, which is the immigrant visa petition. The I-140 petition is filed to USCIS. So Department of Labor takes care of the PERM, and once the PERM is approved, USCIS takes care of the I-140 adjudication. In the I-140 adjudication, the USCIS will see if the employer is able to pay the prevailing wage. So they'll look at ability to pay through their tax returns, through the salary that they're already paying the employee, that is the employee's W-2. They'll also make sure that whatever requirements were mentioned in the labor cert, the beneficiary actually has those requirements. So if the labor cert says that a bachelor's plus 2 years is required, then they'll make sure that the beneficiary actually has a bachelor's degree. So that bachelor's degree has to be submitted, and 2 years of experience letter has to be submitted. If any skill sets were required, proof that the beneficiary has those skills has to also be submitted. What happens once your I-140 is approved? Then you wait for your priority date to become current. And how do you know if your priority date is current? The priority date is the date that you file the labor cert, and that date is mentioned on the I-140 approval as well. So you go to the visa bulletin, you just Google visa bulletin, check the dates, the tables, dates for filing table, final action date table, both the tables, and see whether your priority date has been reached or passed. If it has reached or it has passed, then the next step is filing for adjustment or the 485. Along with the 485 adjustment application, at this point of time, you can also file for EAD, which is employment authorization and advance parole, which will allow you to travel without a visa. So at this point, you can be rid of your H1B status, and you can go on to a 485 status, which is much easier to maintain. Next, what are the current processing times for a 485? The 485 processing times are about 12 to 18 months. But more importantly, that's not the time that it takes for you to get your green card after filing the 485, because it depends on whether your dates are current or not. Even if your dates were current at the time of filing your 485 based on which you're filing, it could be that while your 485 is being processed, the dates may retrogress and may not be current anymore for you. So you have to wait, and you might have a pending 485 even for a few years, which is not a bad thing because it's better than being on a H1. And that's it. I hope you enjoyed the show. It's a wrap for Immigration Fridays this week. Immigration laws, as you know, are complex. If you need any help, please reach out to us, 212-354-1010, or you can send me an email, prashanti@reddyesq.com. Keep watching. Bye-bye.